several days have passed since two powerful earthquakes devastated southern Turkey. Despite the golden window to find survivors dwindling, more than 120,000 rescue workers are still combing through the rubble for any signs of life. Over 4 days since the quake struck, hundreds have been pulled out in dramatic rescues, including children who survived trapped without food or water for more than 100 hours. Monday's magnitude 7.7 and 7.6 earthquakes centered in Kahramanmaras province have affected more than 13 million people across 10 provinces. Some of the hardest hit areas include Diyarbakir, Gaziantep, Hatay and Malatya. Aleppo and Idlib in northern Syria have also suffered heavy damage, with several thousand people losing their lives. The overall death toll passed the 20,000 mark on Friday, which is expected to climb in the coming days. One of the main priorities now is to treat the tens of thousands of people who were injured, made more difficult by damaged roads and hospitals.
I just returned from the night shift with my colleagues. Fortunately, we managed to extract a 16-year-old young man alive and conscious and delivered him to the ambulance to be taken to the hospital. He had significant injuries to his limbs, but he was stable and conscious.
We have a woman around the age of 40. Her injury status is currently not clear, but she is seemingly able to move her limbs. She has been buried here since the start of the quake, so almost 72 hours. We have been trying to free her for 36 hours now. We have several layers of thick concrete on top of her. We are slowly working our way through to her because it was difficult to locate her.
And for more on the relief and rescue work currently underway, joining me now from Ankara is Louisa Vinton. She is the resident representative of the United Nations Development Program. Louisa, welcome to Straight Talk. It's good to have you on the program. So what could you tell us about the extent of damage these multiple tremors have inflicted on the region? Can you walk us through what you've been observed so far?
Yeah, no, thank you very much for having me. And just to say that I think the most important point about this earthquake is its unprecedented nature, that it is huge. And we have had here UN teams of search and rescue professionals, and they are in this unfortunate business for over 30 years. And they have told us that this is something they have never seen before. So I think from outside, people often underestimate really the scale, but just understand this is a territory as big as France, as several large countries, that it has affected a population of 15 million people, 10 major cities, with thousands of buildings destroyed. And really what we're focused on right now, and I think this is why an entire nation is grieving, is a very, very high human toll. We've just seen new fatality figures of 19,000, and we know that 75,000 people have been injured. And sadly, given the scope of destruction and the number of large high-rise buildings that have completely collapsed at a time when people were sleeping in their beds, the number of casualties is likely still to rise. And I have to say, we as a UNDP have been in this region since the 1950s as a development partner, and very active in the past 10 years in helping Turkey cope with the influx of refugees from Syria. So we feel this very acutely. And just to underline here our condolences to Turkey, to Syria, to all those affected. It has affected our team as well. So we are all, I think, in a state of grief. And looking for hope in some of the human rescues we see. But I think what we see as a development agency is that recovering from this disaster, a disaster of this unprecedented scale, will take huge resources, will take many years for the whole region to recover, and will mean enormous upheaval for a population that is larger than many countries in the world. So I think we need to see the scale here, and with the scale comes the urgent need for as much foreign assistance as possible.
So could you talk to us about the UNDP's role during this disaster? I mean, you've mentioned, of course, saving lives is the key priority here, but do you have any future plans moving forward?
Yes, I have to say that in a disaster of this sort, I think each player needs to know his or her role. And here we need to stick to what we do best. So at this time, it is really the direct action of the humanitarian actors or the emergency response teams. We see in Turkey, there's a very high level of preparedness, and we see AFAD as the lead entity going in with huge numbers of people and huge resources. But we also see that they are facing really insurmountable odds in terms of distance, timing, roads, weather.
Yes.
So this is where also the humanitarian agencies of the United Nations are hard at work with teams coming in for search and rescue. And we see that from outside of Turkey, there are more than 5,000 search and rescue people with 250 dogs, from 63 different countries. So that's just an indication of the support coming in on search and rescue. We will see pressure on all the emergency actors. So that's UN, but also a private sector supporting, civil society supporting, Red Cross supporting. So going beyond the immediate challenge of search and rescue, which will be wrapping up over the course of the next week or so, we will see big pressure. We see that people had to flee their homes without any, in their pajamas, basically.
Yes.
So there's a huge need for shelter. It's a very cold winter, unusually cold. Shelter, warmth, food, clothes, all sorts of supplies. So there, the UN system is very much engaged. The World Food Program is already providing hot meals. UNICEF is providing warm clothes for children. We're all mobilized in our way. Our role is a little bit different because we're a development player, so a development actor. So what we underline in a disaster of this sort is the importance of focusing already now, while the search and rescue is underway, while the emergency response is underway, is to think ahead towards recovery, early recovery, late recovery, and reconstruction, because these challenges will face us very, very soon, and we need to be prepared. And what do we mean by early recovery? We mean things like removing the huge amount of rubble we see everywhere from collapsed buildings. That there is, as everyone I know has been watching these horrific videos of collapsing structures and seeing entire regions of cities, neighborhoods just collapse. So in order for life to resume and to go on, that rubble will need to be cleared. And this is something that UNDP focuses on, has experience in from Haiti, from earthquakes in Nepal, from post-war experience in Ukraine and Lebanon. But also, we need to think about how people will be earning a living in the future, how they will get back to work, how small and large businesses will get back on their feet.
So,
and how public
Louisa,
services
as
will
the
be
resident
restored.
representative of the UNDP, you have launched several projects, I know, with local authorities for both Turkish and Syrian women who were isolated from social life due to the war in Syria, as well as the COVID-19 pandemic. How has that played out, and has this devastation added more challenges to your organization to help women?
This is clearly a disaster that has come on top of a long-standing, prolonged refugee crisis. And I have to say here, I would like to echo the words of our Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, has said, the world now needs to support Turkey. Turkey has been hosting a community of nearly 4 million refugees over a prolonged period. So now the time is to help Turkey. But here we see this is the very area where so many refugees are living. And I think you mentioned women refugees. We need to look at how women experience disasters differently from men often. And we need to look, one of the points about the recovery and reconstruction is to pay attention to the categories that we see in the United Nations as those who should not be left behind. So persons with disabilities, women heads of household, those who often lack a voice in ordinary situations are even more impacted by disasters. So it's something that we need to pay attention to. And in any solution going forward, in a coordinated recovery plan, we need to make sure to take those needs into account. Those of refugees, those of women, those of host communities as well, and all those who are especially affected. We saw horrific footage of people who had been living in residential institutions for persons with disabilities. So those are ones where we need to pay special attention, where I think UNDP has a role.
All right, Louisa, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk.